everyone and welcome back. Today I'm going to do a little colouring experiment. I really love the alcohol cozy colouring techniques that you see all over Instagram. I definitely get down that rabbit hole where you watch one and you're there for 2 hours and you've watched like 1,000 of them. But my problem is I really cannot get into cozy colouring books, and I'm not sure why. They just really do not appeal to me. But when I see what other colourists do in them, I'm just amazed because I love all the techniques that you will use in them. So I thought, why don't I take those alcohol marker techniques but put them in the least cozy colouring book that I own? I have been super lucky, and the other day in the mail I got a box of Oros 90 alcohol markers from ARRTX to test out. So I felt like this would be the perfect chance to try something a little bit different and also give these markers a good test out. So today I'm going to bring cozy colouring into this book here, The Epic World of Tolkien. And I purposely picked a very intense non-cozy colouring page. So let's just say this could be a massive hit or a massive miss, but I'll see how I go and I'll test these markers out while I'm doing it. So first of all, let's have a little look at these markers that I got sent. So these are the 90 pack, and they have 88 colours and they have a black and a white. They actually come in this awesome little box. It's got a carry handle, so you can carry it wherever you like. But the most amazing bit is if you flip it around and use this lid, you can use it as a stand. So you can have it on your space where you're colouring and it's not going to take up too much room, and you can actually pick what colours you want really easily and you can just see them right there. I have swatched them and the colours are really good as well. Like there's a huge array of really vivid stuff to some not so vivid stuff, lots of pastels as well, and there's also some really good colours for skin as well as lots of greys. I think greys always come in handy as well. These ones come in a brush tip and a chisel tip. So there's the brush tip there and the chisel is here as well. And I must say the other thing that I did find when I was testing these out before is that the shape of the marker is really nice. I'm not sure if you can really tell on here, but it's more triangular. Oh, if I show you the top, you might be able to see. It's more triangular than circular. So it actually fits in your hand a lot nicer. I actually really like it. It doesn't seem to make my hand ache as much when I'm using them a lot. So that's a really good tip too. Now the box here, I have moved everything around because I like, when it first came, I never like the way that any alcohol markers that I get are placed in a box. That never seem to be right for my brain. So I actually went through and changed them all around into more of a colour order than what it was in before. Okay, so the plan is I've got my page, which is just this one here, which is of, I've been trying to figure it out. It's either a bison or a bull, or if you know what it is, let me know because I'm not 100% sure. In just some water, very non-cozy colouring. But I'm going to look for the elements that I need to colour on here. Go through Instagram, try and find a tutorial on each part, and then I'll follow that tutorial and we will see how we go. So with the tutorials, I won't play the whole thing for you, but what I will do is I will take a screenshot of the tutorial and I'll also put the name of the Instagram account. I'll also link it in the notes as well, just so if you did want to do that tutorial yourself, you can look it up. I started off by scrolling through Instagram to find myself quite a few tutorials that I could use that would work for all the elements in the pages that I was using. So the first tutorial I found was one on sky, and this one looked really easy. So I thought, yep, I'll hop on that. The first step was to colour the whole thing with the blender marker, which I thought was pretty strange because when I'm colouring this whole space in, by the time I put colour over the top, that blender marker is going to be completely dried and probably make no difference. But as you notice, when the tutorials do their little tutorial, they are in the tiniest little space, and it's quite different than doing it on a large space like this. But I decided to follow the steps, so I did do it just to see, but it had dried up by the time I got to it. The next step was to lay down the sky color. I needed 2 sky colors, a darker one and then a little bit of a lighter one just to create a gradient at the end. So I started off by using the darker color, and I actually just had to leave spaces for the clouds, and then I would actually fill the clouds in later. Here you'll see I'm using the lighter color just to cause that gradient. I actually did totally forget about that space on the left there that you can see is completely empty. You'll probably see me pop back in later, and I have done that off camera. But once again, I'm going over with the blender pen, which it has said to do. Then I grabbed a grey marker, and I just went in and just gave everything a little bit of definition in the clouds. And I actually think this sky was working out really well, and I was pretty shocked that it did work in such a big space. And then I'm just fixing up a little bit of the space that is a little bit patchy. But I think that worked out really, really well for a sky. The next thing I had to do was I had to do a tree trunk, and I found this tutorial which was 2 colors, and I thought, amazing, nice and easy. So I grabbed the 2 colors and I followed that tutorial to the T. It did actually say to use a blender marker and to put it over that lightest color to cause like bleeding a little bit in the alcohol marker. That would make it look a little bit like bark, but that didn't work for me. And I think the reason it didn't work is because of the paper. Nothing to do with anything else. I just think that the paper didn't work with it. Then I just had to grab the darker one and just fill in the areas where you think the darker bark would be. Super easy. It was a little bit easier for me too because I already had lines on this page. I noticed that lots of cozy coloring books are quite plain when they have a tree trunk or something like this, but this already had the lines in there. So I followed those lines, which helped a lot. Next, I had to find a tutorial for the treetops, and I found this one because I thought that the treetops looked absolutely amazing in the picture, but it was so hard, and I don't know why it shouldn't have been. I thought it was literally going to be the easiest part of the whole picture, but it wasn't, and I think it might have been because I was getting so confused about where my highlights and shadows had to be. I don't know why my brain wasn't braining, but I was just finding it really, really difficult. So the basis of this technique is to put down your lighter color first where the highlight's going to be, but just in little dots. So don't color in whole spaces, just do tiny little dots, and then move on to the next darkest color and the next darkest color, and so on until you come to your most darkest color, which would be your deepest shadows. Alcohol marker brush tip is amazing on these ARRTX Oroses because it's quite firm, but also is lets you move it around. Another thing I must say too is that these don't bleed, which is amazing. I think that's a big thing you can tell between the cheaper ones, cheaper alcohol markers, and the good quality alcohol markers, is that these ones will not bleed out of the lines. So that was a good plus as well. So at the moment here, I'm just filling in all those towards the end of getting the darkest color. I'll have the darkest color in pretty soon. I might whiz this forward a little bit because this is a little bit boring watching me do dots. I decided the light green was a little bit too light. So what I did was I went over it with more of a neon-y green color, and I think that worked a lot better. And then also filled in all the little spaces as well. Then I grabbed my ARRTX acrylic marker and just went over the tops and the tips of the highlighter color. And that just covered up some of the black lines. The next tutorial I looked at doing was the rocks in the water, and then also the rocks face behind the ox. So I decided to wanted a mossy one. So I found this really cool tutorial that is how to do mossy rocks and followed it to the T. I used all warm grays doing this one because I thought that they're more like a browny color, which I think they worked really, really well. The colors in this box are really versatile. I didn't seem to feel like I didn't have any colors that I didn't need. Every time I needed a color, I could find one in there. So just by following the tutorial, it just lay your lighter color. It was a 3-color tutorial for the rocks. So you lay your lighter color, and then with the darker color, you go in and just add some definition and shape. And then you come in again with a much darker color over the top of that. Right here, my camera just died, so I missed quite a bit of the recording. So if you can see just here, that is where I've done the moss on the rocks. But the next tutorial I had to look for was the water. So I wanted to get that rippled look that I see everyone using in their cozy coloring books because I think it's amazing. But I did come to realize that it has a lot of layers, but that's okay because I had plenty of time. And I just slowly went over, starting with the lightest color and just doubled down on the color just to make a little bit of shadow. And the next color I used was just a little bit darker. And what I did was I went through and I made a pattern. And then from that pattern, I had to fill in the corners. You'll see what I'm doing in a minute. I found it quite hard because I couldn't really see the pattern that I had done. So I didn't do all the corners. I just did a few of the corners that I could see. And I think that works out okay because it's a much bigger space than the space that the tutorial was on, which was like a little tiny square. So I did need to leave a little bit of space because if I filled it all up, it would look a bit crazy. But then I did exactly the same thing again with new patterns, but I did a slightly darker color. And you can slowly see it coming together. And I got a little bit excited at this point because I thought it looked really good and I was getting somewhere. Once again, I just went over the shadows a little bit more with that darker color. And then once again with another darker color, just a slightly darker shade, and do the whole thing again. And then I did the same thing with a white gel pen, but the tutorial did say to maybe make the white gel pen a little bit more scruffy and not so continuous. So I did do that with the white, and I think that worked out really well. Then I also went over all the black marks, covered them up with white, and that's how it turned out. And I actually really liked the way it turned out. Really surprised at how well it worked. And I will definitely be doing that on my non-cozy coloring pages from now on because I do struggle with water. So it's amazing how much you can learn from a 5-second Instagram tutorial. Next, I had to work out what to do with this bull, and that was very, very hard because all of the tutorials are of cute little fluffy things because that's what cozy coloring is all about. So I thought to myself, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a cute little fluffy thing and try and turn it into not so cute and fluffy. So I decided to do the teddy bear, which was a furry teddy bear, but I thought I'll use the same technique, but try not to make it fluffy. So maybe use the same technique, which was a lot of dots. The technique was a lot of dots to fill in the space, using from the darkest color to the lightest color. So I did follow their technique, but I did it slightly different. So it kind of looked more rough than fluffy, because I'm not going to make this guy look fluffy, whatever I try and do. So I try to use it to make his skin look more weathered. I just started off with a darker color. For this, I used grays. I just used a cool gray. I wasn't sure what color to do, but I couldn't really do a brown because there was a lot of brown in the background. So I wanted it to stand out a little bit. So I started off with just using grays. So this was a cool gray that I used here. I also grabbed a little bit of the warm grey again, just to do a little bit on his skin to make it look a little bit more warmer. I thought he was looking a bit stone-like, and I always find if you add like a warm grey to something, it gives it a little bit more life if you're using a grey colour. So I think it turned out pretty well, and then I thought I'll need to give it a little bit of highlights. So I thought I'll just grab my white jelly roll, and I just filled in a lot of the highlights on there. It's quite easy because it does already have quite a lot of the highlights and shadows drawn in on this picture. So that did help quite a lot when I was doing this bison or bull, or I don't know what it is. And then I just had to do a little bit of the things like the leaves floating around. I wanted to add some extra moss. I wanted to add just a little bit of extra foliage up the top there. So I just used acrylic markers for that. I have to say, I actually think it worked out really well, a lot better than what I was expecting. And I'm so stoked, because who would have thought that a few 4-second Instagram cozy coloring tutorials could end up making that. So super stoked. I think I've proven to myself that you don't need to have a cozy coloring book to use cozy coloring techniques. And also the Oros markers are amazing. I really enjoyed using them, and I would definitely recommend them if you're looking for a really good alcohol marker. So thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye.